Hello and welcome everyone to SystemSoft Technologies LinkedIn Live series, Ask an Expert. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Caroline Scania. I am the Program Manager for Business Solutions and Marketing at SystemSoft, and I will be your moderator today. Today, our experts will be talking about some of the common UX misconceptions, the cost of bad user experience, and how it hurts the overall ROI of the company. As a reminder, you can submit questions at any time by posting them in the comments section. If we don't get to your question, be assured we will follow up on that same thread. Now, I'd like to introduce our experts. First, we have Imran Riaz, Vice President of Digital User Experience and Head of the UX Practice at SystemSoft, and a leading thought leader in the industry.
Thank you, Caroline. Good afternoon, everybody. Really excited to having a conversation with you. As Caroline said, my name is Imran Riaz, and I head our UX practice at SystemSoft Technologies. I have over 2.5 decades of experience in technology, user experience. I've been in the user experience field before it even existed as a user experience field. I have a wide variety of experiences in different industries, different size of companies, organizations. I've led small teams from a mom and pop software company to a Fortune 500 company as a global head of user experience. So really looking forward to our conversation.
Also joining us is Everett McKay, Principal of UX Design Edge and UX Consultant.
Thank you, Carolyn. Hi, everyone. My name's Everett McKay, and it's my pleasure to be with you here today. I've been doing UX design for about 30 years now, 12 of which has been with my company, UX Design Edge. And pre-COVID, my focus was on UX design training, primarily on-site workshops with more technical teams. Post-COVID, my focus has been more on UX design consulting. And right now, I'm right in the middle of founding my first company with creating a product, and I'm doing the project management, the design, and the development. And I can tell you it is absolutely thrilling to do all three of those roles.
Well, I'm glad to have both of you on. I'm going to start the conversation today by looking at the poll question that we've been running for the past week on LinkedIn related to UX. We ran the question, what is your top priority for the digital user experience? With the options being understanding your customer, measuring UX ROI, prioritizing UX initiatives, or managing employee resistance. And we had an overwhelming, probably not surprising, number of people come back at 86% with understanding your customer as the top priority. Now, I find this fascinating because it leads us into one of the misconceptions or assumptions that we've discovered as we go through this process, which is we know what users and audience want. Imran, I'm assuming you see this every day, so I would love to hear from you on this misconception and any examples you have.
Sure, Caroline, thank you. That's a really interesting poll numbers. Most of the organizations don't really think about their customers. At least traditionally, we have not been very customer-centric and human-centric in terms of our user experiences or products and services. But before we get to that, let me talk a little bit about some of the misconceptions I think people are very interested in hearing about. One of them is user experience and UI the same thing? It's an age-old question. It's like the chicken and the egg thing. You can never kind of get one side or the other. What I think is important here is to understand that the user experience and UI are not disconnected from each other. User experience, user interface is what you see on the screen, whether it's your mobile device, your desktop, or what. But user experience is much, much deeper than that. It is what information do you need? Can you find that information? How do you interact with the product or the service? Is that experience easy, intuitive, straightforward for you? Do you really need a training for it? How do you feel about it? Are you delighted? Are you frustrated? All of those things are the user experience, but they culminate into and manifest themselves into what the user interface that you look at. So that's one of the misconceptions I think we wanted to make sure that we clear. Anything else, Everett, on that one particular one that you'd like to add? I know you have written a book on the whole user interface.
Well, the one thing I've observed on that particular subject of, do we really know our customer? I think the challenge there is that we think we know our customers better than we actually do. So if you were to ask someone, do you understand who your customer is? They're going to say, of course, yeah, I know. And especially for the longer lasting, the older, more successful companies that have been in business for 10, 15, 20 years, they know who their customers are, or at least they think they do. The problem is that they know the customers that they currently have. They know their present customers. What they don't know is their future customers, and that their future customers might be quite different from their current customers because the world is changing. I like to look at the world in terms of old school and new school. And I think the problem is a lot of very well established, successful companies are a bit too focused on looking backwards to their existing client base, and they're completely unaware of a completely new market out there that they haven't really begin to understand. And one thing you mentioned recently, Imran, is that COVID has changed the world in a very significant way, and that what we used to know about what people wanted and the way they behaved is
Right.
different now because of our new situation.
Absolutely. And the key thing, as you're pointing out, Everett, is the paradigm has shifted. Traditionally, product managers were the ones who were defining what the product feature and functions should be. And they were always overwhelmed by the customer request. People who were the loudest in terms of asking the largest organization who were using your product and services, they never had the opportunity to actually talk to the end users, the human side of things, to understand what are the top features that they're looking for. What exactly is it within those features that they might find useful and add value for day-to-day task. And that's where the user experience practice brings into play, is to allow you to get deeper with your users, get in touch with that human side of things. Just like as Albert was saying, before COVID, we had a very different expectations. Were a lot more face to face in communication. But now we have moved into a whole new virtual world with this metaverse and all those conversations happening. We need to be able to figure out how do we communicate with our users digitally. And that requires a deeper understanding of our users. There are lots of tools we have at our disposals, whether it's creating personas or customer journey maps, or service blueprints that connects a lot of different technology systems, processes into a seamless user experience. And that's something that you get when you engage fully with a mature UX model.
One quick thought before we move on, and that is Imran mentioned something very interesting. It's one of my favorite things to talk about, and that is the word feature. As someone deeply involved in the UX design space and doing UX design training, the biggest challenge I have to help a team do their best work is get beyond thinking of a product as a collection of features. Feature-based design is not going to get you where you want to be because feature-based design is technology-based design.
Yes.
The difference is that we have to really truly have a user focus. You have to get more into scenario-based design and delivering value. The feature isn't there because we want to check something off a feature list. Maybe technically that might be a situation, but in the real world, users care about getting their work done, getting their goals achieved. And that isn't necessarily accomplished by features. It's accomplished by being able to actually get things done in a practical way. And the problem with feature-based design is it kind of limits our thinking to technology. So when I hear feature-based design, I'm thinking technology-based design. I'm not thinking
Yep.
user-centered based
Yeah,
design.
and that's absolutely been traditionally been true, where technology was the answer to everything, right? For the companies, oh, we got new latest technologies, and whether users understood that, whether users wanted that, and that's where UX research comes into understanding who are your users and have your users change. And a great example of that is when I was working for an engineering company that created software for engineers. They were very focused on these PhD type folks providing that software. But in reality, as we started doing some user research, we found a lot of Gen Z type folks were getting into that field, and their mental models were totally different. They were not accessing their software on a big desktop. They were starting to look at that software from mobile devices. So we had to come up with a whole new design and a paradigm to allow them to be interact with that product from that company. Otherwise, we were losing the customers to competitors who are really thinking into the future. And that's one of the things Everett and I were talking the other day is the, you you have to compete on a user experience level. Feature level is not going to be able to win you, especially when you're competing against large behemoths who are out there, have been there for a long time, because they will up you up in terms of technology and a lot of features. But can you deliver a valuable experience that the clients want in a simple, intuitive way? That's what will get you in the game.
And you bring that up, but this also makes me think in terms of, like, as I'm listening to it, it sounds expensive, and that's one of those misconceptions that we've come across is it's too expensive and time consuming. It's only for big companies. But how does that translate into ROI for companies? I want to focus back again on, this is about the hidden cost of UX and bad UX.
Yeah.
What are the assumptions, and what does poor UX mean on how does that impact the cost of it to the company?
Yeah, that's a really interesting conversation, because a lot of research has shown many projects fails because of poor plan, not just poor planning, but poor user experience. In fact, IEE estimated that about $150 billion of projects are wasted or canceled because of bad user experience, whether we are throwing the product as soon as it's launched. There are multiple examples of those out there, or we are just having to redo the design and the product because of the misunderstood user requirements or misunderstood personas or mental models. And that's where what we need to focus on. Adding user experience team members to the project team, in fact, does not add cost. In my own personal experience of working for a Fortune 500 company and leading large projects, multi-million-dollar projects, when we added user experience to the project, in fact, we ended up lowering the overall cost as much as double digits, because we were getting things done the right way the first time. We didn't have to wait.
Right.
And I'd love to hear some of your examples, Everett. I know you have worked with a wide variety of clients as well.
Well, one thing I've learned over the years is that at the end of the day, pretty much everything is a trade-off. We just don't realize that. And I was actually having a joke with Imran before we started. I have a book here called Cost Justifying Usability. Nobody's written a book called Benefit Justifying Usability. We're really good at measuring costs, but we're not so great at measuring benefits. So when we talk about the cost of user experience, that's usually some sort of financial cost of the employees, completely ignoring the benefit side in terms of things like not wasting our time on things that are not productive, or having a product that people actually love and want to buy and use, and being able to charge a premium because we have the best product. There's all sorts of benefits to developing a great user experience, but we're too focused on the cost of doing so. Carolyn, you mentioned the idea that UX is only something for large companies, that it's not for something for small companies. Of course, there's a lot of counterexamples. There's a lot of small companies doing excellent UX work these days. But the one thing I like to do or think about with respect to UX and small companies is that, while the small company can't hire a huge UX team with all the disciplines, I think that great UX design is their ultimate competitive advantage. It's basically the best way to be that disruptive innovator. So you've got that established competitor that's got that old legacy product with all the power and capability, and it's hard to use and it's expensive. If you want to compete with them, you can't compete with them based on features. You can't compete with them based on marketing or ad budgets or anything like that. But if they've got a poor UX, you totally can compete with them based on having the best user experience by focusing on those capabilities that their users care about the most. So I think actually in many ways, great UX design is one of the top competitive advantages that a small company can have.
Absolutely. There's a lot of research. In fact, MDI, which is a Management Design Institute, ran a study, and they looked at the data for organizations that actually followed a 10-point user experience agenda. They performed over 200% better on the stock market versus the companies which did not. So
Right.
to Everett's point, it is not for only large organizations. I have worked for very small companies where I was just the army of one in terms of the user experience, and we were able to make huge impact in terms of the revenue, top and bottom line both. I'll use an example from even from a larger organization where people can actually see the value in terms of dollars. So we redesigned a main flagship product, making it much more user intuitive, as well as in line with the expectations of the users based on the UX research. And we were able to increase the yearly subscription for that product by over 25%. That translated into roughly $50 million a year in additional revenue. And that's what Albert is talking about. It's not always about that we are losing money because customers are switching because our user experience is bad. It's also about that conversion rate. It's also about people being loyal to your product and service. Think about Apple. They have their usability issues. We all understand that. I hate it every time I have to turn on my phone because I ended up taking uh, a screenshot every time and I have to go delete it. But in terms of the overall design and what's out there in the market, they have a great design in most of their products, and you wouldn't find anybody else out there, any other company, where people are standing in snow, in Midwest snow, for 2 nights or camping out for getting the latest gadget. And that's the brand loyalty that they have created because of the design, and that is translates into huge revenue streams for them, and that's what we are talking about. And as Ever was saying, you don't need to have an army of UX experts. You can partner with consulting organizations like ours, or you can hire an individual journalist who can help you move along significantly and make a huge impact on your products and services. So one other thing I think we were going to talk about, and that's the elements of understanding the UX, or your users through UX, user experience research.
Right.
And that's something that I think is another huge misconception that you need an army of UX researchers. It's going to take a months and months to be able to do that. That couldn't be further from the truth. In fact, in my very first job as a UX researcher, I was able to do a UX research project within 2 weeks on a very large project. And I traveled all over the country. In fact, I was doing the user experience research during the day, flying overnight, getting to the next destination, and I got it done. But the impact of that UX research translated into roughly $10 million in savings for the organization.
Wow.
And it's different types of tools, whether you're creating user personas that allows you to have a deeper understanding who your users are, or a journey map to see where the bottlenecks, where the issues are. um, and any thoughts from you, Everett, on that?
Well, so I'm having a problem thinking of the last project I work on where I didn't start with user research. And for me, user research almost always means user interviews. That's my top drawer technique, which I find just enormously valuable and relatively inexpensive to do. But my new favorite example is my last one, which is I did some research for a customer who had an idea for a certain product for a certain market, and what we discovered is that the idea he had among the various concerns for the target users came in dead last. I mean, not second to last, absolutely last of all the things they cared about. But we were able to discover what they actually wanted through that process. And we're now working on a completely new concept based on that. Now, the old school way of doing things would be to not do that research and actually write a bunch of code and get something on the market and then see what happens. And as Imran is pointing out, that's a very expensive thing to do. So when we talk about it being expensive, I'm just not so sure we're really accurately doing the accounting for the benefit side.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's been many other examples. One that comes to my mind is UX research is also your great tool for understanding the competitive landscape. How are the products um, comparing to you from your competition, and how the users are reacting to those? What are some of the missing features? That's where a lot of innovation comes. In fact, in one of my organizations, I implemented a whole new innovation playbook based on the UX research, and we can get into the details in some other time, where we were able to bring 49 different new patterns for the products and the company within that organization, within us 1 year time frame, but not just patterns, but we were able to introduce new innovative features because of understanding what our competition was doing or not doing, or what we are doing and how users are reacting to it. I know we are kind of running over time on this topic. Caroline, do you want to move to the next
I
one?
I find this topic fascinating, and I could listen to the two of you for hours. But we are limited on time, and we actually have some questions from the audience. One of the first
Sure.
questions that I'm seeing is, we are asked to have knowledge of all the applications out there: Figma, Adobe XD, Sketch, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, etc. Companies make it look like that a UX designer should know everything, including code. So if someone is trying to go for UX, what should he focus on learning more? And what should be his first move towards UX design? This is from Anushka Singh, a program analyst.
Yeah, let me answer it at a generic level. This is a very good question. I'm assuming this is coming from a designer perspective. Um, my first advice to people getting into the UX field, when I was going to the universities and colleges giving lectures, for example, at CMU, I always tell people to learn the process, not the tools first, to understand how that process manifests itself, have that empathy for the users. The tools which you use are not necessarily the end what you're looking for. What you're looking for is a deeper understanding of your customer base, your clients, your users, so that you can create a better design for them. Whichever tool you use, just be good at that to be able to quickly translate those findings, those research activities, those user understandings into something that you can put in front of your clients, put in front of your users to get a feedback and keep moving forward. All of those are great tools. Whichever you like the most, I would just become the expert in it.
So from my perspective, yeah, I think we focus way too much on tools. But the tragedy here is that there's a huge difference between getting a job and doing a job. And so to get the job, you have to have competencies in all these tools, or at least appear to. Whereas doing the job is a completely different thing. Personally, my favorite tool is called pen and paper. I use that more than anything else. And my goal is to create ugly prototypes and mockups that communicate whatever it is I'm trying to communicate. And so it's not the tool, it's what you do with the tool. And so, in terms
Yeah.
of doing the job, it's understanding what the tool is for and being able to take full advantage of that. Unfortunately, you can't necessarily get the job with those skills because they are looking for the checklist of knowledge, which I think is unfortunate.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever got a job because I knew how to prototype on paper, but I do, and it's a tremendously valuable skill.
Yeah, and that's the point. One of the things that you might be looking for is in terms of the organization. If you're looking for a job with that organization, if you want to assess their maturity level, if they're asking you to be an expert in some of these visual tools, rather than knowing the user experience process and having that deeper understanding about the process, I would run a different way. That's just my thought process.
Oh, I know we have more questions, but I want to keep an eye on the time today and respect everyone's time. I would say for right now, this wraps up our episode. I want to thank you, Imran and Everett, for the great insights, and thank you to the audience for joining us today. I hope you found this discussion insightful. Imran, do you have any last words?
Thank you, Caroline. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. I know this was a shorter conversation. I would love to be able to interact more with you. Please reach out as you have more questions, more discussions you would like to have. My contact information is on these flyers. I'm on LinkedIn actively, always looking to connect with people and trying to answer those questions. You can also access our website, sstech.us, to be able to connect with me. And we would love to have a deeper conversation, and we're hoping to do more of these conversations with you in the coming near future. And thank you, everybody, for joining us.
Everett.
Yes, thank you, Carolyn. Thank you, Imran, for inviting me here today. I really appreciate it, and I'm honored to be here with you today. I'm happy to have participated in this. It's great topics, great conversation. Love to encourage you to connect with me on LinkedIn, I'd love to do it. And if you'd like to follow up and have a chat about something, let's talk.
Yeah, and I will have a plug for Everett for being too modest. He has written a couple of books. They are right behind me here. One is UI Communication, is the Intuitive Design. So definitely pick up those books as well. But we'd
Yeah,
love to connect with you guys.
they're awesome.
Yeah, yeah, I testify.
I'll testify as well. Both of these can speak endlessly on these topics, and they really do know what they're talking about. So please feel free to connect with our experts and learn more if you have any questions. Again, you can reach out here through LinkedIn. We have our links to the website online as well. And if you'd like to have us conduct a free heuristic evaluation of your site, please contact us at sscheck.us at UX Contact Us. Thank you again, everyone, for your time. And the remaining questions, just so you know, we will be following up on those questions after this.